Weakness isn't hidden, it leaks. Most people think they're clever at disguising it, but the truth is simple. The things people try hardest to cover are the things they reveal the loudest, and the ones who can read it instantly, they own the room without saying a word. Machiavelli wrote that a ruler must always know the true nature of those around him, because the wrong read on a person could cost him power, money, or his head. Replace ruler with you, and the principle is unchanged. The biggest mistake people make is assuming others mean what they say. The powerful don't listen to words, they watch the cracks between them. Think of weakness like bad perfume. It spreads before someone even sits down. The insecure man enters a meeting, and suddenly his voice is just a little too loud. The nervous woman on a date laughs a second too quickly at something not even funny. The colleague, desperate to be respected, uses complicated words in places where simple ones would do. All of these behaviors scream the same thing: I'm not solid. Please don't look too closely. And that's the first dangerous truth. People don't expose their strength. They flaunt their weakness in disguise. The louder the show, the thinner the armor. Arrogance almost always masks insecurity. Niceness often hides fear of rejection. Even confidence can be overplayed until it collapses into obvious performance. Most people miss it because they're focused on themselves. They're busy worrying about how they look, whether they're being judged, whether their tie is crooked or their smile is forced. Meanwhile, the sharp observer is watching everyone else bleed out micro-signals. Weakness is always visible to those who know where to look. Here's why it matters. If you can't spot weakness instantly, you lose before the game even starts. You'll trust the wrong ally. You'll fear someone who's actually fragile. You'll miss the exploitable cracks in the armor. Or worse, you'll underestimate the person who hides strength well and walk straight into a trap. Machiavelli warned rulers not to be deceived by appearances. People either overstate their power or understate it, but almost never present it accurately. Take emotional reactivity. It looks small, but it's one of the clearest giveaways of weakness. Someone who snaps too fast, argues too passionately, or tries too hard to justify themselves is basically showing you their leash. The one who can't stay calm is the one you can push, bait, or corner whenever you want. Their emotions are their weakness, and they'll hand you the remote to control them. Or look at oversharing. A disciplined person keeps information tight, measured, and strategic. A weak one spills details nobody asked for. They can't handle silence, so they start filling it with confessions, opinions, or nervous chatter. Every extra word they hand you is a piece of ammunition you can later use. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Spotting weakness isn't just about protecting yourself, it's about weaponizing perception. Imagine walking into a negotiation. Within seconds, you notice the other person checks their phone nervously, laughs too hard at your joke, and avoids eye contact when making a demand. That's not just awkwardness, that's a blueprint for control. You know where to press, when to pause, and how to let silence choke them into speaking. And the silence, always watch how people handle it. Weak people can't stand it. They'll crack, fill the void, and reveal more than they wanted to. The strong, however, know that silence is a test. They sit in it comfortably because they're not scared of being unseen. Machiavelli himself would tell you, the one who speaks least in the court usually holds the most power, because everyone else is rushing to prove themselves. The average person believes weakness hides in big failures, crying, begging, or obvious breakdowns, but the real weakness is subtle, constant, and nearly invisible until you know the signs. A forced laugh, a quick justification, a borrowed opinion, a flicker in the eyes when a question lands. These are the cracks that separate the manipulatable from the untouchable. Here's the brutal twist. Most people will never learn this skill because they're too polite to admit they want it. Society trains you to ignore weakness, to give people the benefit of the doubt, to not judge too quickly. But Machiavelli's whole philosophy was built on the opposite. Judge instantly, decide quickly, because hesitation is what gets you played. The reality, weakness isn't rare, it's everywhere. People leak it in how they talk, sit, argue, laugh, apologize, brag, and explain. Every conversation is a test, not of intelligence, but of strength. The winners are the ones who stop listening to the words and start dissecting the signals. So here's the cold strategy. The next time you walk into a room, stop worrying about yourself. Sit back, say less, and observe. Within minutes you'll see it, the cracks, the nervous tells, the small betrayals of composure. The person who claims to be confident but can't hold silence. The one who claims to be calm but taps their foot. The one who claims to be powerful but needs everyone to agree. Power isn't about who speaks the loudest. It's about who spots weakness first. And once you do, you own the game before anyone even realizes they're playing. Here's the paradox. Strong people rarely advertise their strength, but weak people constantly try to mask theirs, and in the process they reveal it. Machiavelli warned princes about this exact trap. People will always try to appear stronger, wiser, or more virtuous than they are, but he also noted that appearances are never perfect, and the cracks are where the truth seeps through. Think about it. Genuine strength doesn't need a billboard. A billionaire doesn't have to explain he's rich. A soldier doesn't need to tell you he's disciplined. A chess master doesn't have to announce he's strategic. They just are. And it comes out in their calm, in their choices, in their restraint. Weakness, on the other hand, always seeks camouflage. The insecure boss shouts orders. The fake alpha dominates small talk. The pretender overcompensates. But in covering the gap, they spotlight it. Psychologists have a term for this: compensatory behavior. When someone feels inadequate in one area, they exaggerate another. The classic example is arrogance. True confidence is quiet. The loud, boastful type is often terrified of being seen as small. And once you understand this, you stop taking arrogance at face value and start reading it as insecurity wearing a costume. Another way weakness reveals itself is through contradiction. Pay attention to what people say versus what they do. The person who says, "I don't care what anyone thinks," usually cares more than anyone else in the room. The one who insists, "I'm not insecure," just told you where their insecurity lives. This is Machiavelli's principle of inversion. When someone emphasizes something too heavily, assume the opposite. Here's a simple trick. Spot where people break their own pattern. Strength is consistent. Weakness slips. The person who always talks tough but folds when challenged. The one who projects calm but loses composure at a mild insult. The colleague who insists they're not stressed but whose hands shake before a presentation. You don't need years of study to notice it. You just need to stop being distracted by the surface. And let's address why this matters in power. If you know where someone's mask cracks, you know where to press. Machiavelli would tell a ruler, "To see a man's weakness is to own his leash." In modern terms, this means if you can detect insecurity, you know exactly how they'll react when tested. And predictable reactions are the easiest to control. Take body language. Most people think they can fake it, but weakness slips through. Crossed arms when challenged, darting eyes under pressure, a laugh that comes a second too late. These are involuntary tells. Poker players study this obsessively because one micro-expression can mean the difference between winning a fortune and losing it. In daily life, the stakes are smaller, but the principle is identical. Weakness hides poorly. Here's the funny part. The stronger someone tries to look, the faster they expose themselves. You've probably seen this in dating. The guy who brags endlessly about how many women want him is usually the one most afraid of being alone. The girl who oversells her independence is often the one most terrified of rejection. The overcompensation itself is the confession. The trick is, you have to look past the performance and catch the leak. This is also why silence is so lethal as a strategy. Say nothing and people get nervous. Weak people can't stand the gap. They'll fill it with explanations, justifications, or bragging. The more they talk, the more they reveal. The strong, on the other hand, sit comfortably in it. They don't need to prove anything. Their power is self-sustaining. That's why Machiavelli insisted that a ruler's restraint often spoke louder than his speeches. Another crack. Weakness is reactive. Strength is proactive. The weak are always responding to criticism, to silence, to someone else's lead. The strong set the frame and let others orbit. You can see it in a group instantly. The weak seek validation. The strong barely notice. The weak wait to be told what's funny, what's acceptable, what's right. The strong laugh when they want, walk when they want, and speak when they want. It's not arrogance, it's control. And that's the real insight. Strength isn't loud. It's quiet control. Weakness, no matter how hard it tries to hide, ends up advertising itself. The insecure man brags. The nervous leader over-explains. The manipulator insists they're trustworthy. The more someone works to sell you their image, the less you should buy it. Spotting weakness is like spotting a magic trick. Once you know where to look, you can't unsee it. The hand gestures, the nervous laughter, the unnecessary words, all betrayals of the mask. Machiavelli's advice wasn't to be cruel for cruelty's sake. It was survival. The one who misreads people loses the kingdom. Today, the one who misreads people loses the deal, the job, or the relationship. So here's your edge. Stop being hypnotized by surface strength. Look at the overcompensation. Listen to the contradictions. Watch for the moments they can't control. That's where the weakness is, and once you see it, you'll never be fooled by appearances again. Let's cut into the first 4 dead giveaways of weakness. These are so common that once you see them, you'll wonder how you ever missed them. Machiavelli would remind us, the key isn't in spotting strength. That's usually obvious. The real art is spotting the cracks, and the cracks always show if you know where to look. 1 point, arrogance that masks insecurity. The loudest person in the room is rarely the strongest. Real confidence doesn't need an amplifier, but arrogance is different. It's defensive. It's the mask insecure people throw on when they're terrified you'll see the truth. Think of the manager who constantly reminds everyone that he's the boss. A true leader doesn't need to keep saying it. His presence is enough. The more someone feels the need to project dominance, the more fragile they usually are. Machiavelli noted that rulers who shouted about their power often lost it, because power that must be advertised is already in question. Watch arrogance carefully. It's not a display of strength. It's a shield for fragility. 2. Fear of silence. Pay attention to how people handle silence. Weak people panic in it. They rush to fill the gap with chatter, jokes, excuses, or over-explanations. Strong people are perfectly fine letting a pause hang in the air because they don't fear what it reveals. Think of an interrogation. The investigator stays quiet, and the guilty suspect starts talking themselves into a hole. Silence is a mirror, and insecure people can't stand what it reflects. This is why Machiavelli valued silence as a political weapon, because those who cannot sit with it expose themselves. The one who speaks first in a negotiation usually loses. The one who can wait forces the other side to reveal their hand. 3. Emotional reactivity. Here's a quick test. Insult someone lightly, and watch. Do they laugh it off, or do they snap? Do they get defensive at the smallest jab? Overreaction is weakness. A secure person doesn't crumble because someone questioned them. An insecure person treats every disagreement like a personal attack. Emotional reactivity is predictable, and predictability is exploitable. Machiavelli advised princes to master their tempers, because an enemy who knows your triggers already owns your moves. In modern terms, whoever controls your emotions controls you. The person who can't help but explode, sulk, or spiral has just told you exactly where their leash is. 4. Validation addiction. Weak people crave validation like air. They fish for compliments, exaggerate their achievements, or desperately seek reassurance. It's not that wanting approval is inherently bad. Everyone enjoys it. The difference is dependency. Strong people can stand on their own even when no one applauds. The weak constantly check if you're clapping. This is why narcissists often seem powerful but are actually fragile. Their entire sense of self is outsourced to other people's reactions. And once you see it, you realize it's not strength at all. It's slavery. Machiavelli would laugh at a leader like this. If your confidence depends on others, you're not leading, you're begging. Notice something about these 4 signs. They're all about control, or the lack of it. Arrogance is fake control projected outward. Fear of silence is the inability to control presence. Emotional reactivity is the loss of control under pressure. Validation addiction is handing control to others entirely. Each one in different ways reveals where a person doesn't have mastery. Here's a trick you can use immediately. In conversation, say less and watch more. The weak will do the rest for you. The arrogant will rush to prove themselves. The insecure will overshare. The reactive will snap. The validation addict will fish for praise. You don't need to interrogate. You just need to give space. Weakness hates empty space, because empty space forces it to show itself. Think of it like stress testing a structure. You don't need to smash it with a hammer. You just apply a little pressure and see where the cracks spread. People are the same. Slight silence, small challenges, minimal disagreement. Watch how they handle it. The strong adapt. The weak collapse or compensate. And let's not forget the humor in this. Once you learn this, everyday interactions turn into a comedy show. The guy at the gym flexing in the mirror. The boss bragging about his open door policy while glaring at anyone who actually uses it. The influencer posting, "I don't care what people think" 3 times a week. It's so obvious once you see it. Weakness announces itself while pretending to hide. Here's the harsh truth. Most people never learn to spot this because they take words at face value. They believe arrogance is confidence, chatter is charisma, reactivity is passion, and validation seeking is just being social. But Machiavelli would say, no, look deeper. Confidence is calm, charisma doesn't need volume, passion holds itself steady, true strength can take silence, insult or solitude without breaking. So next time you're in a room, don't just listen, observe. The weak can't help but reveal themselves, and once you spot it, you'll know who to respect, who to avoid, and who you could control without them even realizing it. We've already cut through arrogance, fear of silence, emotional reactivity, and validation addiction. By now you can probably already see cracks in people you know. But let's dig into 3 more. These are subtler, but once you spot them, they expose weakness almost immediately. Machiavelli would call them the loose bricks in the wall of a person's defenses. Push slightly, and the whole structure shifts. 5. Inconsistency under pressure. Anyone can look strong when life is easy. The real test of character shows up when things get messy. Weakness hides in the calm, but crumbles in the storm. Watch how someone behaves when pressure is applied, a tight deadline, an unexpected challenge, a sudden conflict. Do they keep their composure, or do they scramble, contradict themselves, and switch their stance to survive? Machiavelli wrote in The Prince that a ruler's stability comes from being consistent in character, even when fortune shifts. If a leader panics under stress, the people lose faith, and enemies exploit the cracks. Translate this into everyday life. If someone is calm when everything's smooth but turns erratic under the smallest hit, you've found weakness. Think about the coworker who's confident until the boss asks a tough question. Suddenly their words stumble, their story changes, their voice shakes. They're not steady, they're a weather vane. Inconsistency reveals someone who has no foundation, just a performance. Strong people bend under pressure but don't break. Weak people collapse because their strength was an act to begin with. Here's a trick. Apply small, controlled pressure. Ask direct questions in negotiations. Create quiet pauses in arguments. Watch if they stay aligned with their original stance, or if they start leaking insecurity by shifting positions. The one who flips is weak. The one who holds steady is solid. 6. Oversharing and compulsive honesty. This one sounds counterintuitive because society praises honesty, but too much honesty at the wrong time is a sign of weakness. Strong people know when to speak and when to hold back. Weak people spill everything, secrets, insecurities, unnecessary details, as if confessing earns them safety. Oversharing is usually rooted in fear, the fear of not being liked, of not being trusted, of not being understood. So the weak dump their life story on the table, hoping disclosure will buy acceptance. But what it really does is give away leverage. Machiavelli warned that power rests in mystery. A prince who reveals everything to everyone is already vulnerable. People respect what they can't fully read. In personal life, oversharing looks like someone you just met telling you about their trauma, their financial struggles, or every detail of their failed relationships. In professional life, it's the employee who reveals company secrets just to appear helpful or transparent. Both are cracks in the wall. They think openness makes them likable. In reality, it makes them predictable and manipulable. Compulsive honesty is the cousin of oversharing. The weak blurt out everything because they can't hold the discomfort of silence or selective truth. Ask them a question, and they'll confess details that were never required. Strong people don't lie, but they also don't give more than necessary. Weak people give too much, and that's weakness you can exploit without even trying. 7. Approval chasing, in disguise. We already covered validation addiction earlier, but approval chasing has another layer. Disguise. The weak often pretend they don't care what people think, while secretly bending themselves into pretzels for it. This is why the guy who says "I don't care about anyone's opinion" is usually the one scrolling comments at 2 a.m. Strong people don't need to announce it. Weak people announce it to convince themselves. Look at how someone positions themselves socially. Do they change their opinions based on who's in the room? Do they alter their tone depending on who's watching? Do they laugh at jokes they clearly don't find funny? That's approval chasing. The weak can't stand disapproval, so they constantly adjust themselves to avoid it. The strong hold steady, even if it costs them popularity. Machiavelli had little patience for rulers who sought approval over results. He wrote that it's better to be feared than loved if you can't be both, because fear at least ensures compliance. In modern terms, strength can stand rejection, weakness can't. Approval chasing is like a leash around someone's neck. All you have to do is pull slightly, and they'll walk wherever you want. This shows up in small ways too. The friend who orders food based on what everyone else chooses. The colleague who never states a controversial opinion. The partner who molds themselves into whatever you want them to be. At first it looks like harmony, but in reality, it's weakness. And once you see it, you'll realize that the people who seem easygoing often aren't strong, they're just approval addicts in disguise. The thread that connects them all. Notice how all three of these weaknesses, inconsistency under pressure, oversharing, and disguised approval chasing, come back to one thing: lack of control. Inconsistency is losing control under stress. Oversharing is losing control of information. Approval chasing is losing control of identity. Strong people control their state, their words, and their stance. Weak people leak, shift, and reveal without realizing it. And here's the beauty of spotting these signs. The weak will always expose themselves. You don't need to interrogate or manipulate. Just watch. The cracks are loud if you know what to listen for. And yes, this is where the humor creeps in. Because once you see it, it's hard not to laugh. The guy ranting about how he doesn't care about approval while checking his likes every 10 minutes. The manager who says, "I thrive under pressure," while sweating through his shirt. The stranger who tells you their whole life story before you've even finished your drink. Weakness always thinks it's hiding, but it's not. It's performing on stage for anyone paying attention. Machiavelli understood this centuries ago. Don't waste time fighting strong enemies directly. Study the weak, spot their cracks, and use them. Because in power games, you don't win by shouting louder. You win by observing quietly, then striking where they're softest. We've already dissected arrogance, silence fear, emotional reactivity, validation hunger, inconsistency, oversharing, and disguised approval chasing. That's 7 cracks in the armor. But to finish strong, let's expose the last 4. These are the ones people don't realize they're broadcasting, but once you see them, you'll never unsee them. 8. Lack of boundaries. Weakness often hides in kindness. At first glance, the person who always says yes looks generous, selfless, even admirable. But dig deeper. That constant yes is often fear-driven. They can't say no because they're terrified of rejection or conflict. And a person who can't enforce boundaries is already compromised. Machiavelli would have seen it instantly. A prince who gives everything away to please his people is doomed. Power requires holding something back, setting limits, and drawing lines. Without that, others consume you. Translate that into everyday life. The co-worker who takes on every task to help out, the friend who never refuses favors, the partner who always compromises. It looks noble, but it's weakness. Here's how to spot it. Test the boundary. Ask for a small but inconvenient favor. Do they say yes instantly, even when it clearly costs them? That's weakness. Strong people protect their time, energy, and values with no. Weak people hand them over like free samples at a supermarket. The danger with people like this is not that they'll dominate you, but that they'll drain themselves and then resent you later. Weakness without boundaries isn't harmless. It's ticking resentment, disguised as kindness. 9. Body language leaks. Words can lie, but the body is a terrible liar. Weakness almost always leaks through posture, tone, and micro-reactions. If you want to spot it instantly, stop listening to what someone says and start watching how they carry themselves. Notice the posture. A strong person sits or stands like they belong. A weak person shrinks, fidgets, or makes themselves smaller. Notice the eye contact. A strong person holds it steady, not staring aggressively, but comfortably. A weak person either avoids it or overcompensates by staring too intensely. Notice the hands. A strong person's gestures match their words naturally. A weak person's gestures are delayed, excessive, or restless. Machiavelli wrote about appearances of virtue, that power often comes from how people perceive you, not just who you are. The body is the first appearance. That's why weak people who try to look strong often overdo it. Puffed chests, loud voices, exaggerated movements. It's theater. Real strength doesn't need a costume. Here's a funny test. Watch someone's face when silence hits. Do they twitch, frown, laugh nervously? Those little leaks are like cracks in concrete. Weakness always shows itself in the milliseconds between thoughts. 10. Avoidance of responsibility. Avoidance of responsibility. That modi hunkitari hulchid modi mot, shadow, shameful. Another classic sign. The person who always has an excuse. For them, it's never their fault. Life is unfair. The boss is biased. The market is broken. The world is against them. Sure, sometimes those things are true, but when every single failure comes with a story that removes them from responsibility, that's weakness on display. Responsibility is power. The strong own their mistakes because ownership means control. If I caused it, I can change it. The weak avoid responsibility because admitting fault feels like admitting powerlessness. Ironically, in trying to escape blame, they escape growth. You'll see it in conversations. Ask why something failed. If the first word is always they or it, you're dealing with weakness. The strong might mention external factors, but they'll circle back to themselves. Here's what I should have done differently. Weak people never circle back. They only point outward. Machiavelli knew rulers who blamed fortune for their downfall were already doomed. Fortune is unpredictable, yes, but the prince who always blames luck isn't fit to rule. Same today. The weak see life as happening to them. The strong see life as happening through them. Spot the excuse maker, and you've spotted someone who will never rise. 11. Overcompensation. This is the loudest sign of weakness, because it's weakness dressed up as strength. Overcompensation is when someone takes a small insecurity and tries to smother it with an exaggerated performance. The man insecure about his intelligence constantly drops big words. The woman insecure about her looks spends 3 hours editing one selfie. The manager insecure about authority micromanages every detail. Machiavelli would laugh at this, because he saw rulers do it constantly. A weak prince, insecure about power, would build grand parades, golden palaces, and endless speeches to look strong. But the people always saw through it. They knew the one who needs to scream about strength is the weakest of all. The beauty of overcompensation is that it reveals the exact weakness someone is hiding. The guy bragging about money, non-stop, insecure about money. The woman who flaunts loyalty quotes all day, afraid of betrayal. The boss who reminds everyone, I'm in charge here. Deep down they don't feel in charge. Weakness doesn't just expose itself. It gift-wraps the insecurity and hands it to you. The trick is simple. Listen to what someone exaggerates. Whatever they overplay is usually what they underfeel inside. Strong people don't need to prove their strength. Weak people can't stop trying. Now you've got the full list. Arrogance as cover, fear of silence, emotional reactivity, validation addiction, inconsistency under pressure, oversharing, disguised approval chasing, lack of boundaries, body language leaks, avoidance of responsibility, and overcompensation. 11 clear signs, 11 cracks in the wall. Notice the pattern. Weakness isn't always loud. Sometimes it's quiet compliance. Sometimes it's nervous chatter. Sometimes it's fake confidence. But in all cases it comes back to control. Weakness is the inability to control yourself, your emotions, your words, your stance, your narrative. Strength is the opposite. Composure, restraint, consistency. And here's the Machiavellian truth. Spotting weakness isn't about cruelty. It's about clarity. You can't navigate people, relationships, or power if you can't read where the cracks are. The world is full of performers, but when you train your eyes to see these signals, you cut through the performance instantly. The arrogant boss trying too hard, the oversharing stranger, the friend who can't say no, the partner who avoids blame, the guy puffing his chest at the bar. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. Weakness is everywhere, dressed in disguises but always leaking through. And the final Machiavellian twist. Once you master spotting weakness in others, you start spotting it in yourself, and that's the only way to actually erase it. Because the strong don't just notice weakness, they make sure they don't embody it. Now that we've dissected weakness in all its disguises, arrogance, silence, fear, reactivity, validation, hunger, inconsistency, oversharing, approval chasing, lack of boundaries, body leaks, avoidance of responsibility, and overcompensation, it's time for the real question: what do you do with this knowledge? Because let's be blunt, spotting weakness isn't a party trick. It's not about sitting in a cafe, smirking at the guy bragging about his investments while you whisper to yourself, overcompensation. This isn't trivia. This is survival. This is power. Machiavelli's entire philosophy was that perception shapes reality. If you misread people, you miscalculate power. If you miscalculate power, you lose. And if you lose, it doesn't matter how smart, kind, or ambitious you were. The graveyards of history are filled with people who underestimated weakness, both in others and in themselves. So let's flip the script. Let's make this useful. Here's the Machiavellian truth. Weakness in others is leverage. Weakness in yourself is a liability. When you see weakness in others, you suddenly understand their moves before they make them. The man terrified of silence will fill it for you. All you have to do is wait. The woman desperate for validation will hand you the key to her emotions. All you have to do is give or withhold approval. The boss who overcompensates will expose his insecurity. All you have to do is push that button at the right moment. This isn't about cruelty, it's about awareness. Because the world is full of people hiding behind masks. The sooner you learn to see through them, the sooner you stop getting blindsided by their performances. But here's the other side, the part most people skip because it stings. The weaknesses you spot in others are the same ones hiding in you. Let me put it this way. The guy you mock for oversharing? Scroll back through your own texts. How many times have you typed paragraphs defending yourself when a single sentence would do? The co-worker who always says yes to avoid conflict. How many times have you bitten your tongue because you didn't want to seem difficult? The arrogant boss who tries too hard. How many times have you raised your voice not out of confidence but out of fear of being ignored? That's the Machiavellian mirror. Every weakness you spot in others should make you check yourself. Am I guilty of the same leak? Am I broadcasting the same crack in my armor? Because here's the brutal reality. People are already reading you, whether you like it or not. Just as you can spot weakness in them, they can spot it in you. And the predators of the world, the manipulators, the social climbers, the ruthless opportunists, they're hunting for it. Think of life like a chessboard. Weakness is the exposed king. You can't afford to leave it vulnerable. So what's the solution? Simple, but not easy. Step 1. Train your awareness. Start watching people. Not what they say, but how they react. Where do they crack? Where do they flinch? Do they avoid silence? Do they chase approval? Do they overcompensate? Once you start looking, you'll see weakness everywhere. Step 2. Audit yourself. Write down the signs of weakness we've covered. Arrogance, silence, fear, reactivity, validation, hunger, inconsistency, oversharing, approval chasing, lack of boundaries, body leaks, blame shifting, overcompensation. Then ask yourself, where do I see this in me? Don't lie, don't justify, just admit. Step 3. Replace weakness with strength. If you overshare, practice restraint. If you fear silence, practice holding it. If you chase validation, practice denying yourself the dopamine of constant approval. If you avoid responsibility, force yourself to own it. Strength isn't built by pretending weakness doesn't exist. It's built by burning it out, piece by piece, habit by habit. This is what Machiavelli meant when he said it is better to be feared than loved. If you cannot be both, not feared in the sense of cruelty, but feared in the sense of solidity, people should sense that you are not easily cracked, not easily manipulated, not easily broken. Think about the people you respect most. Why do you respect them? Chances are, it's not their charm or their wealth, it's their solidity, their composure, their ability to remain unshaken where others would fold. That's what strength looks like. That's what you must cultivate. Because the truth is this, weakness makes you predictable, and predictability makes you controllable. The arrogant man is predictable. The validation chaser is predictable. The oversharer is predictable. Anyone can run circles around them. But the person who doesn't overreact, the person who doesn't flinch in silence, the person who doesn't need validation, who doesn't overshare, who doesn't excuse, who doesn't overcompensate, that person becomes unreadable, uncontrollable, dangerous. And that's the goal. To spot weakness in others instantly, yes, but more importantly, to eliminate it in yourself, so that when others look at you, they see nothing to grab onto, no loose threads, no cracks in the wall, just composure, confidence and control. Machiavelli didn't write for the faint of heart. He wrote for people who wanted power, who wanted to survive in a world where most people are either performing or pretending. And survival requires one thing, strength. So the next time you walk into a room, don't just listen to the words, watch the silence. Don't just look at the smiles, watch the posture. Don't just hear the excuses, listen for the avoidance. Weakness is always there, waiting to be seen. And when you see it, remember, the only unforgivable weakness is not in them, it's in you. If you fail to recognize your own. That's the final Machiavellian lesson. Spot weakness instantly, burn it out of yourself relentlessly, and walk through the world like someone who cannot be read, cannot be broken, and cannot be controlled. That's not just spotting weakness, that's becoming untouchable.